Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Gilliland. I'm the co-founder of the Legal Geeks with Jessica Meterson. Tonight, or today, depending on when you're listening, Kris Butler, known as the Star Wars lawyer, is with me, and we're gonna jump into Skeleton Crew with the first 3 episodes. Kris, how are you doing?
Hello, what have we here? How's it going, Josh? It's an honor to be here.
It's so nice to actually hang out and chat. Because
Yeah,
it's like normally it's TikTok or Instagram. So now being able to actually like hang out is,
yeah,
is so nice, despite the fact we're 2,000 miles away. And
yeah, but details.
and I didn't mean to work the pretenders in, but here we are, the holiday season, and I think Star Wars goes very well with Christmas, and I'm
I
very, very grateful to have it.
yeah, I do too. Obviously the last five movies came out around Christmas time, and I think what's better than going to a galaxy far, far away for the holidays.
Yeah, Christmas morning. I mean, there was the Y-wing, there was the AT-AT, there was a lot of good
Mm,
stuff from my childhood. That, well, first I just turned 50, and action figures are still a wonderful Christmas gift. Two, I'm glad that 4-year-olds today are getting to experience that with
mhm.
their parents or grandparents who are Star Wars fans, and that's just a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
Having that kind of love and generational adventures together. Which brings us to Skeleton Crew. What's your overall reaction to this series?
I'm enjoying it. It's fun. I think of like the first episode, and you see, women Neil like pretending to be like having lightsabers and having combat, and it's like we did that the same as a kid. We use actual sticks, or we had those Phantom Menace lightsabers from like Walmart or Toys R Us that were I don't know if they were really hardy because we were kids and we weren't as strong, or if it was just better plastic back then. But we were having lightsaber duels, so it brings back those memories of like when that love of Star Wars is like pure because it's just awesome.
I hear you, man. The My childhood, late 70s, early 80s, the toy lightsabers were effectively flashlights with long plastic tubes.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have today is far superior, but this is uh, a love letter to the 80s because
Mm-hmm.
I was a kid in the 80s. So watching this, it's like, wow, this is pure E.T., Steven Spielberg type feels of kids on an adventure, and it's well done.
Mm-hmm.
The story pieces are connecting things that you don't necessarily think are going to be important become important, and
Yeah.
that's a neat trick for it to not just be obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's clearly a thing that's going to happen, and there's a moment in episode 4. It's like, whoa, that ties back to episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
Well done. So that's more of that. And, it highlights Star Wars as being made by people who love Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't listen to us just gush being the fanboys and girls that we are. We did some legal analysis and we both took some notes here and we both have done TikToks and you've also done some reaction videos. Where can people see those?
You can see them on YouTube on my channel, still Star Wars Lawyer. And I do them with Brooke, aka B Dazzler.
Cool.
And yeah, we react to all the episodes so far, and then we also just started doing we did Vox Machina season 3 when it came out. Um, which who knows? Let's talk about the legal world of Taldore.
We're blessed with having so much content.
Yes.
I've been playing with holiday themes,
Hmm.
whether or not it's, Bob Cratchit's right to time off or Scrooge, not complying with OSHA rules, like
Hmm.
that stuff. But we also have just so much content that's good. Like thinking back across this year, Batman the Cape Crusader was excellent.
Hmm.
So same with the Superman animated show, and putting a timestamp on this, tomorrow the Superman teaser trailer comes out,
Yep.
and I'm giddy. Like I
Hmm.
cannot wait.
Did you watch Superman and Lois?
Not all of it. So
Okay,
I,
it is phenomenal.
I yeah, I've seen clips. It's like, okay, I'm gonna have to go back and watch from. I think I got up to season 3, and then the way it was on the app was just a little tough to watch. But
Oh yeah, that's fair.
uh, it was like, wait, there's another season, and because I again love letter, because again it was Superman and Lois, they really did capture the character well,
Hmm.
and this time of year is the anniversary of Superman 1978. We have the
Yep.
Christopher Reeve documentary, so there's a lot of uh, reasons to look up,
Hmm.
just because it's like such again. I think every Superman show and movie's been done with the intent of loving it.
Hmm.
Some have missed.
Yeah, that's fair. Yep.
Some have missed. Uh, but this is the new one looks like it's really leaning into hope. And uh, I'm excited about that. Just as with Skeleton Crew leans into joy.
Yeah.
I felt Acolyte was short on the joy department, and which was, I mean, Andor was able to do a dark and complex show and still not lose hope. While Acolyte, I had some problems with, and in pivoting to Skeleton Crew, I feel nothing but love for this show.
Hmm.
It's like rock on. It's just, but there's lots of legal issues. So
Yes.
why don't you take the first shot of an issue that you spotted from the first episode?
So we the first thing that sort of popped into my mind, my major in college was international relations, so I did, plenty of looking at international law. And one of the most fun things, especially when it comes to fantasy and fiction for maritime law, is talking about pirates. So there's a lot there. The first thing was for when we came between Fern and Wim about who found the ship and who got to keep it, and it was just the essentially, calling dibs, which of course we did as kids, we did as teens, so that was fun. So I can dive into that a bit.
Yep.
Uh,
Why don't we start with the pirates? And
yes.
because that's, yeah, I mean, it was like the old Errol Flynn type piratey shows and Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm just leaning in hard with that Star Wars spin, instead of like a Western, in space, which is Mandalorian. This is the Pirates in space.
Hmm.
But I have some thoughts. Take it away.
Yeah, so I with when I think of space pirates, the first thing I think of is The Martian, from where he talks about like legally I am a pirate, because he commandeers the rover that is technically the property of NASA. So in this case, you have them trying to take and rob the New Republic. I was going to say High Republic, the New Republic shuttle, which they were just going to rob it, which is adds into the legal definition of piracy. I just don't understand why they didn't see any treasure and they're like, well, we've got nothing. I mean, you got a good ship.
You could sell that. I mean, there's Straits of Malacca where we have real pirates.
Hmm.
Their ships have disappeared and then reappeared with new names painted on them, and that's bad because that the ship has value of itself, and as does the crew could be held for ransom. So like it's not all. Again, I get wanting cold hard currency, but they got a ship out of it, which was what pirateers and buccaneers were doing in the Age of Sail. But again, it does meet the legal definition from being on the high seas, except for in space. And a crime is committed by boarding another ship and trying to plunder it. And so within the laws, both federal and international, I look towards the some of the analysis we did from Star Wars Resistance. And 18 USCS section 1658 says, whoever on the high seas commits the crime of piracy is defined by the law of the nations and is afterwards brought in or found in the United States shall be imprisoned for life. So we don't mess around.
Hmm.
So the law of high seas are defined as open waters of sea or ocean as distinguished from ports and havens within narrow headlands on the coast. That's a case from 1883. And then pivoting to international law with the Convention of the High Seas, any illegal act, violence, detention, or any act of depredation committed for private ends by the crew of passengers of a private ship or private aircraft and directed. So, yeah, these guys are pirates.
Yeah, the U.S. code does not mess around when it comes to pirates. Nearly everyone for being a pirate is in prison for life, and then receiving stolen property. 18 USC 1660 is, you it's if you, especially if you know that it was from a pirate, you can be in prison for up to 10 years. That's a lot.
It's almost like piracy was a problem and we did not tolerate it at all. Just
Yeah,
no, we're not doing that here. And you know what? That's okay. Because that's how laws work.
yeah.
You raised the other issue of the finders keepers, and we're about to get into property law, which is always a rip roaring good time. So, who owns the Onyx Cinder?
The first thing that I thought of was, could a child own property? And I know, at least in my home state of Michigan, and a lot of the surrounding Midwestern states, kids can own property. I think, especially when you think of teenagers, like they can own cars, like their parents can buy them a car and put it in their name. So I think when it comes to, I think maybe a boating license, I think you have to be 18. So I think that might be something similar, but that doesn't mean you can't own it. You may just not be able to legally operate it, but that doesn't mean you can't, or probably more accurately, your parents or guardian can't hire someone to do it.
Yeah, the thanks for mentioning the safe boating laws. So I volunteer in Sea Scouts,
Hmm.
which is the maritime part of Scouting America. And across the country, almost every state has boating safety laws now, which is good because there's a lot of boating accidents. And in California, right now, everyone 50 and under has to have a safe boating license.
Hmm.
And they've been rolling it out for about, I think, 8 years, like adding a new age demographic. So they started at like the 16 level and we're going up from there. So every kid going on the water needs to do the safe boating class. And I think I'm not sure where it's going to be next year or this coming January. But last year or the year before, it hit the 50 mark. And so now I don't know if it's going to be 55 or 60, but they keep moving it up. So that way everyone operating a boat will be a safe boater. But
Hmm.
again, it varies state to state. So, but again, these kids definitely don't get a learner's permit, let alone a uh, safe spacecraft card before taking
Hmm.
the Onyx Cinder out for a spin. So
But
there's
but I will say in their defense that it was on autopilot. So how much of a spin did they take it on? I think there's also, and I remember this from my legal research class from first year of law school, which was about DUIs.
oh,
And so the fact that they did start the ship. So there is an argument that they were operating the ship without any kind of license. Now, did they drive it? No, but they did operate it. And then at some point, SM33, I'm just calling them SME because
That's
He's Smee.
yeah, he's
Yeah,
me. Just
yeah.
striped
He was.
shirt,
Hmm.
hat. uh, keep going.
Yeah, so I definitely think that there's a legal issue there of they're operating it. But when it comes to the ship itself, you know, is it a derelict vessel? Is it a sunken ship? And then does the law of fines apply or the laws of salvage?
Uh, So I think it is a derelict vessel because it's been lost and abandoned and, overgrowth and trees have punctured the hull. So again, we don't see a breach take place, but the fact that there's roots throughout the ship,
Hmm.
things have been growing for a long time. So wherever there's a through hole fitting, that should be looked at for intrusion. But I think it's like a lost lifeboat.
Hmm.
The lifeboat that washes ashore can be considered derelict, and then you get into the finders keepers because abandoned property is technically owned by no one.
Hmm.
Now, if it has a name on it, like a mark of appropriation to throw in a little Gendy rich action, then it could be like, well, no, it clearly belongs to this person. The fact that these pirates have been dead for centuries, if not thousands of years, I think any of their descendants are gone, like that, presuming that they had any family.
Hmm.
So I don't think that well, the ship would be a thing of value because you can fly it. It's not like it's been on the bottom and it's toast. Like
Hmm.
this, it's a functional ship, despite it needing a good detailing. I would say it was derelict, that any marks of ownership have passed because of the amount of time. It'd be like finding an old British warship from the 1820s. Well, not a warship because that would be still belong to Great Britain, but a privately owned vessel,
Hmm.
or something, from the Age of Sail. Pick a nation: Spain, France, the United States,
Hmm.
and it's been frozen in ice and it dethaws,
Yeah.
and that puppy is abandoned. Everyone
Hmm.
involved with it's dead. So I think that's the same for the Onyx Cinder.
Yeah, although if it is a military craft, the law of fines has those exceptions. So the U.S. doesn't play. They said, hey, it's pretty much if you ever find a U.S. ship, it doesn't even matter if it's from like 1782. The U.S. has the position that it is always looking for any of its lost craft. So if you find it, it belongs to the United States.
Yeah, and there's some really weird uh, news stories out there
Hmm.
about some World War II vessels, some that have disappeared from the bottom. That the theory is scrappers want the steel, and
Hmm.
so it's grave robbing. But that's also why when Ballard found Bismarck, he kept that location secret,
Hmm.
because it's technically property of Germany. There are also some other unpleasant things associated with it that they don't want people knowing where it is. Uh,
Hmm.
but again, warships are different, uh, as opposed to Lusitania, which is not state owned,
Yeah.
just a dangerous wreck. Uh, so don't go diving. Uh, we also have, this is just as subtle, but there's truancy. There's a tr
Yeah.
there's a truancy droid.
Yeah. Now, I personally think that these kids and their parents are not going to be found, at least in Michigan, would not be found guilty of truancy, because at least in Michigan, it's not a strict liability offense. There has to be willful, um, uh, like the truancy has to be willful, and at least on the kids' part, they definitely did not intend to leave the planet. Uh,
Whoops.
yeah. Their parents, I mean, one parent knew they were on the ship, but he couldn't do anything about it, so.
That's I love him because he's so 80s dad. And his arc is 80s dad of like, no, I'm gonna go get my kid back. And I just you see him there plotting, he's figuring things out, and
Hmm.
it's 80s gloriousness right there. Uh but there's a whim when he falls down the hill because he's late for school, he's missed the bus. I I don't know the truancy law in every state.
Hmm.
And I don't, I'm not sure if that would be truant or not because was he just late? Because it wasn't an
Hmm.
intentional ditching. He missed the bus. He was trying to take a shortcut.
Hmm.
I think he just got, granted, you get in trouble because
Yeah.
in California, since I've looked at this before, ironically with acolyte research, kids have to be in school.
Yeah.
It's like that's not optional. They have to
Hmm.
be in school. So him not being in school is a reason for her trying to go like, dude, what are you doing?
Hmm.
You know, come with me. And then the classic question, how? Uh
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's a fair thing, like he literally fell in a ditch, So what is he gonna do? He can't climb out. He tried, so
I won't go home now.
right at that point he's probably like, oh, thank the force, because he's just like otherwise, it's R.I.P. Whim, show over.
Yeah, it's like, and then that's really, really sad. Like that took a ugly turn at the beginning.
Yeah.
Uh but yeah, it's not intentionally truant. Now with Fern, there's racing, and that
Hmm.
opens the door for reckless driving. Even though I'm pretty sure she would claim she is not a reckless driver, that she is in complete control of her hover bike. But when you're zipping between traffic and buses,
Hmm.
law enforcement tends to frown on that.
Yeah.
Here, here's a again, I avoid speculation,
Hmm.
but we haven't really seen biological life in charge. Sure,
Hmm.
Fern's mom is like an under administrator or under superintendent, but all law enforcement is droid.
Hmm.
I'm wondering if the supervisor is a droid or a computer, and this is going to get like a Star Trek spin to it.
That's my theory.
Yeah,
Because also just the name, the supervisor, not supervisor, and then a name, just the supervisor feels very AI to me.
yeah, it's hints of Fallout,
Hmm.
and again, there's a whole bunch of Star Trek episodes with the supercomputer running a society.
Or the supreme intelligence for the Kree and Marvel.
Oh, good. Okay, so you're a Marvel fan as well. Good to know. Good play. All right. I love the original Captain Marvel, so
Yeah.
well done. Get out the nega bands. All right, so we'll eventually find out, but that is an interesting question of that society has functioned well with potentially with artificial intelligence running it.
Hmm.
Kids taking placement tests, and we have placement tests and career tests. We've had them for decades, but that doesn't mean you actually have to become the firefighter.
Right.
You know, you're well suited, for, you know, you know, farming or, pick whatever. That doesn't mean you actually do that.
Right. Yeah. And so for me, that raised a few legal questions or responses. My first thing is the 13th Amendment, right? You can't force people to work. And then there's also, 15 USC 1589 that, forced labor is a felony for up to 20 years imprisonment. And then also it made me break out my handy dandy Federalist Papers, because Federalist Paper 9 is written by Alexander Hamilton and sort of props up the question. It's called the Union as a Safeguard Against Domestic Faction and Insurrection, and it sort of like proposes the question, and then Madison answers it, and the 10th one. And he, one of the good quote from his liberty is to faction what air is to fire, but it is impossible to perform because liberty is essential to political life, just as air is essential to animal life. And so like you think of all your what's it called, young adult novels where it's a post-apocalyptic world and every society's put into factions. That's essentially what it is here. um
And it looks like it's a city state.
mhm,
Like it's not the entire planet. I mean, like the entire planet's at Atten, but
yeah.
it's not like everyone lives in Sunnyvale, California.
Mhm,
It's just because that's one little city,
right.
you know, as opposed to Cincinnati. Like if all life was in Cincinnati, the planet would look weird because
Mhm,
that would be the only place with lights on it at nighttime. The rest would be dark.
right.
And how big is this city state? Is it the size of a state? Is it the size of a continent? Or are we talking San Francisco?
Yeah. I mean that place where they took the test in looked to be like the size of a gymnasium or auditorium, and it looked pretty full. So, at least you're talking maybe 100, couple hundred families. Um, and Neil had younger siblings, and you also saw like the elderly. So it looks to be at least, a solid size, maybe even possibly a metropolis.
Yeah, which again raises questions about do they have a limit on the number of children that a family can have?
Hmm.
To make this sustainable, it'd be like filling a fish tank. Like there's a rule of thumb on how many fish can go into different sized tanks. And because you don't want to overfill it, and underfilling it makes the fish go crazy as well. So
Yeah.
it's like you got to figure out what's the right path here. And if this is a closed ecosystem, do they have safeguards in place to make sure that they don't have too much growth or too little growth?
Hmm.
And and because like there's no immigration, so like they do need to be self-sustaining. And we haven't seen, again, everyone that we've seen is like a white collar job.
Hmm.
You don't see people who, I'm in charge of, cattle, and or produce or any of
Yeah.
the things that make life, possible, that
Hmm.
you need farms.
Yeah.
And without animals and having, a plan for how do we feed people, how's that all going to work? And well, I think we're going to find out like that.
Yeah. And it makes me think, and this is getting a little bit into episode 4, just
Mhm.
seeing that it seems like there probably is a part of that society, and that's probably for the people that test low. I think of Interstellar,
Yeah.
for instance, where Matthew McConaughey's son, test like would have tested like really high, but they don't have the need for those different kinds of professions that his son would have been, but they need farmers because they're running out of food. So it's one of those situations. Maybe they've completely mechanized getting food, but they need people to run, keeping the barrier up, whether they know they're doing it or not, or running the systems that is mechanizing their food, or the droids or whatever.
Yeah. And it's an interesting question to say what's going to be mechanized and what's going to be biological.
Hmm.
Because does making law enforcement mechanical make it better
Yeah.
or worse?
Yeah.
Or does it add a fear factor so no one does anything wrong
Hmm.
because you're not going to reason with the machine?
Right.
Again, just terrifying prospects because it goes against our notions of freedom. Because what if the kid really wants to paint? Well, we don't need artists. We don't need musicians anymore. Well,
Right.
we need you to be an auto mechanic. But again, Neil's, I'm going to go with dad.
Hmm.
in the garage has the Saint Pauli girl, you know, emblem on the wall, but with one of the blue trunk aliens,
Hmm.
which again was fantastic. Is there somebody brewing beer?
Yeah, gotta be.
Yeah, God, I mean, it's a hobby.
Unless they're living in a prohibition state.
God, that would be boring and
Yeah.
sad.
We
Uh,
saw how well that worked out
yeah,
here 100 years ago.
it was an excellent plan. And
Yeah.
there were people who argued because the election of 1932, the biggest issue wasn't the economy, it was prohibition.
Hmm.
FDR won on prohibition.
Yep.
And there were people who thought, oh, we nearly won. It's like, oh, you keep telling yourself that, buddy. Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. People will always want to drink.
Yep.
So, anyway, let's pop into the second. And we learned that travel beyond the barrier is illegal,
Hmm.
but everyone knows what a starship is. So
Yeah.
this society's weird because
Hmm.
they know of other planets. They're multiracial because you have different species living together,
Hmm.
and so that's cool. But no one has a desire to ever leave.
Yeah, it seems like they had to do it with permission, and it makes me wonder, I was thinking during this episode, do they know that it's no longer the Republic, it's the New Republic? Because I think that knowing, and we learned that answer in the third episode, but it's because they just kept saying the Republic, and then when they were on the pirate base, they said Old Republic Datteries, and I'm like, do they mean Old Republic as in the Grand Republic, or do they mean Old Republic? And then my Kotor hat went on, and I'm like, and
Yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah, yeah. The old
uh,
one. So
yes. So yeah, so one of the things you proffer was like, is prohibiting travel beyond the barrier violating the Constitution? And the answer is yes.
yeah,
Unless you are, detained by the state, the Constitution does provide, the right to interstate commerce, and then as long as you get a passport, intra country commerce or travel. I'm saying commerce. Doggone commerce clause.
it's hard to overlook that since virtually all federal legislation ties to the Commerce Clause,
Yeah.
even though they started backing off on that after one of the gun regulation cases.
Yeah.
Because it was like, you guys, I think, was that Logan? Again, con law flashbacks. Uh,
Hmm.
it's like, you guys pushed a little too hard. Like, we're not saying you can't do this. We're saying not with the Commerce Clause. Like, that's just, but you have the right to interstate travel, and it's in the Constitution, and it's also through the 14th Amendment with the full faith and credit clause of we can go state to state. Like, we
Yeah.
don't have checkpoints, to get into Illinois. Like,
Hmm.
we can go there. We don't have to flash ID at the border, and the law says you're welcomed as a friend. And if you
Hmm.
want to, we could go move to Chicago, and
Yeah.
it's a wonderful city. But like that's the point of this. These people can't leave at Atten.
Yeah.
And whether it's the planet or the city, like, they're stuck there and they seem content with it. And that's the
It,
weird thing.
and I guess one question we have to ask is, if let's just say this is the Republic, and they're just a state in the Republic, is it something like the United Nations, or is it something like the United States? Where, because it seems like, based on how we've seen things in the prequels, and in the High Republic and Old Republic, that travel between planets, as long as you're landing at a port and you identify yourself, it seems like it's more akin to traveling between countries. Um, and if that's the case, then, maybe none of them have passports, essentially.
I wonder if the European Union is the model that
Mm-hmm.
they're following, because it's similar that, and I am by no means an expert on this. I only learned a little bit about it because of Brexit, that
Mm.
you have a unified currency and you have the ability to travel and go work, and thus that's different than, we don't, if you're in France, you can't go to Germany for a weekend holiday. Like it's, and everyone's using, the EU money. Uh, I wonder if that's the situation, or is it, again, is there some like a fourth option?
Mm.
Because um, it's purposely vague, because I don't think the writers are thinking, what will these lawyers want to talk about?
Yeah.
I know they
Yeah.
like us, but we're a very specific demographic.
Yeah, I know, and then at least in the some of the writers like Charles Soule,
Yep,
who was it was a
who's a lawyer.
lawyer, and some of the other writers have been lawyers, or like some of the editors. And I remember at San Diego, no, what's it, San Diego? Yeah, at San Diego. I've been to a few concerts here, so they're all starting to blend together. At San Diego Comic Con, I went to go see, Kevin Scott, and he wasn't at the Star Wars table, but he was going to be at the Dark Horse one. And so, like, some of the other authors were just like, "Oh yeah, Kevin, a lawyer's looking for you," and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "No, no, just you say the full name, because you're just gonna freaks. You don't just tell a random person, 'Hey, a lawyer's looking for you.' Like, that's not a good sign."
No, no, it's when if you have a phone call and says like, "Hi, I'm a lawyer," that generally freaks people out. And
Yeah.
I'm on a my church's selection committee for a new pastor. One of the other members is a doctor, and we both
Mm.
have addressed the congregation together. And it's like every time it's a joke that if a lawyer and a doctor have showed up to talk to you, the news probably isn't good.
Yeah.
So, and again, no one calls a lawyer to go bowling. It's
Hmm.
normally because something horrible happened. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like, why do you hang out with the endodontist? No.
Hmm.
But if you need a root canal, you're there. All right. Yeah,
The other thing in this episode that I brought up when we get to the pirate base is trespass, false imprisonment, kidnapping.
let's break those all down, because it's weird that the pirates also have a code,
Hmm.
that we have Captain Silvo being imprisoned, and then the children get imprisoned. And to be fair, there's a weapon discharged and there's some disorderly conduct with like flipping over the noodle bowl, and
Hmm.
causing a little havoc. But they were also scared for their lives. So
Yeah.
they thought they were going to get mugged in a really ugly way. So I don't I would defend them. Like they're very defendable for what they did. But they get arrested, and like there's no, like they're not appearing before a magistrate.
Hmm.
There's no process, but there's definitely a prison cell.
Yeah. And, and it's also like, it's not and they weren't guilty of anything. It's more of he just wanted to soften them up for them to talk, which, I mean, they're kids. And you see like Neil will snitch at the drop of a hat. He will give you any information. You just have to ask. So that was an interesting move. I mean, it was a narrative move, but you know, if the pirates wanted to say these kids were trespassing, I don't think they had. I think the kids have a pretty good defense there too.
Yeah,
Because yeah, go ahead.
it's a port. Like they
Yeah.
were there to conduct business, no questions asked. That's the entire reason this place exists.
Hmm.
They're able to go in, dock. They pay the ferrymen to take them to shore.
Yep.
They go in to go buy stuff. They want to go home,
Hmm.
and then they are afraid of getting mugged, and then they're assaulted.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're kids.
Yeah. The false imprisonment and kidnapping charges right there. You know, they don't have, I think, the legal authority or justification to keep them from leaving because they did, like you said, they did pay. and then you threw them in jail. And them being kids, if you call the authorities, the authorities will take them or get up with, but they haven't done anything to really justify keeping them there.
Now uh the character who has the spikes on her head, who could be a stripper or a lady of the night or maybe a cocktail waitress. It's hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But she was concerned with the girls. It's like you're kids, like you should not be here.
Right.
Uh, so the Good Samaritan is pulling the girls away, saying like, we got to get you out of here because you should not be here. This is a bad place and kids shouldn't be. It's like being in a dive bar where guys are getting stabbed. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, just the children should not be there. And the I think it's KB makes the comment that you're kidnapping us. I
Mm-hmm.
think she's technically right. Like there's like they're getting drug away
Yeah.
and there's physical contact. Uh, but the Good Samaritan is trying to make sure nothing terrible happens to the children.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think it's defendable. Uh,
Now, I will say that the woman has a defense because she's not trying to, as far as we know, unless she believes them about Ad that she's not trying to hold them for ransom or reward. So
yeah,
that might be her defense that it's not kidnapping,
yeah,
which, maybe, a false imprisonment, but maybe that gets away with the attention. Like, I'm literally trying to save their lives and get
yeah,
them out of here,
yeah.
you know?
She thought she was rescuing the children from pure hell. So
Right.
again, heart's in the right place.
Defense of others is a good defense.
Yeah, it's a perfectly legitimate defense.
Yeah.
And there are too many people who don't act when somebody's in trouble because
Hmm.
we don't have any laws compelling people to go save someone. So someone going like, yeah, I don't want these children ending up in a really bad situation, so I'm going to go save the children. People generally will fine for that individual. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's again very defendable. So we have the comment about can pirates hire bounty hunters to go capture another pirate without due process? And what bounty hunters could we see uh because of this one little line?
Well, I I think we just think about the Mandalorian and how the Bounty Hunter Guild worked. It's one thing when the Empire or the New Republic did it, right? They hire a bounty hunter to go get someone. Um, but when there were, like the Mandalorians under I can't remember his name in the third season that had the ship that took the ship from Bo-Katan. I can't think of his name, but he was taking someone uh on behalf of a client. So there has to be some sort of maybe in the Outer Rim it's legal because the New Republic doesn't really reach out there, but there's some kind of understanding that this is okay. So I think that a pirate could hire a bounty hunter, say Fennec, no, well, Fennec's with Boba. Cad Bane is dead. So you have Din and Grogu, but I think Din's gonna have a little trouble, you know, transporting people in the Naboo fighter.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of other. Dirge is still alive, technically. Uh, who knows
Bosk,
where he is? Yep, Bosk. Yep.
seeing him in live action and actually do stuff in live action, because Empire Strikes Back, he just stands in a very intimidating fashion
Hmm.
with a spacesuit from a Doctor Who episode.
Yes.
Uh, wow. Uh, but I think he's due for live action, and Mando's easy. I mean, like it would make sense for. But when we had Mando and Book of Boba Fett, he ended up hijacking it. Even though that was one of the best hours in Star Wars history,
Hmm.
it got weird because it's like, where's Boba Fett? Uh,
Right.
but again, it would be again if this is how he gets a new Razor Crest or something that the minivan for a family,
Hmm.
like that could be a good way for him to have a cameo. or they save it for the movie and we get something completely either new characters or someone from Empire Strikes Back that's in the lineup. I think that would be easy.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who's still around from after War of the Bounty Hunters. Since it's not too far after that. Dirge is alive, but Dirge would be expensive and hard to come up with to do in live action. Also might be a little bit of overkill to get some kids.
Yeah, yeah, it's like hammer for a nail for a fly type
Yeah.
situation. Yeah, it's like,
Um, and I think most other people. Oh, Imbo, I think from the Clone Wars, the one with the hat and the wolf.
oh, wow, that's a deep cut.
Who else? Greedo's gone. Um, Now I'm
Fair.
going through Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. I'm like, who's on my bounty hunter team?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Again,
Kersantin, maybe.
it opens the door for somebody we've seen before,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure who that is, but it opens the door. And
Hmm.
and uh and with the way that these folks are sneaking in Easter eggs, I I wouldn't be surprised if it's somebody recognizable.
Yeah.
So, because again, these are clearly fans, and so it's like, yeah, I really like IG-88, so let's put him in. You know,
Yeah.
you know, we got a model, so
Hmm.
let's do it. All right. Pivoting to episode 3, duty to rescue Smee. What's your thoughts on that?
Now, I think, it's me recognizes Fern as his captain. And, if a captain and an underling have an employer-employee relationship, then under the implied contract theory, employers have an obligation to rescue employees. So in that sense, I think that they do. And then after that, then you get the rescue doctrine. Does sending Jod in there to rescue, does that satisfy the rescue doctrine? And then for those that don't know the rescue doctrine, it's got four main elements. One, that there's a peril or appearance of peril to a third party caused by, and in this case, probably caused by the kids, which, he went in there to rescue them. So, yeah, I think that would be fair. That the peril or appearance of peril must be imminent, which, they didn't know whether he was about to be, just deactivated or whether he was going to be smelted. That a reasonable person, the law's favorite category, would recognize that the peril, and that, anybody else would have recognized that there's the peril, and then that there was reasonable care in effecting the rescue, which I think so. I think it was. I think they satisfy all those.
Yeah, it went as well as it could have.
Yeah, which in Star Wars, that's not a high bar to clear. You know.
There have been worse rescues. So,
Yes, we
like,
looking at you, episode 6.
yeah, it's like there have been way worse rescues. Uh, everything worked out. So no one had to sneak in a lightsaber, no weird plan. It was pretty straightforward of go in, get the droid, sneak out.
Nobody heard. Oh, 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 oh. So we're all good.
We're all good. Like, it's like the how it should have ended. I wanted something crazy complicated. Wait, that's what we're doing? Oh, okay. All right, now you are going to get captured. Pardon
Why?
me?
Why me? Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring you in, and you're gonna pretend to be a prisoner, but you're actually gonna get thrown in a cell. Chewbacca's like, why?
Couldn't we do something different?
Yeah.
Uh, they were tired by then. So anyway, I I do think there's a duty to rescue. And even if it's just based upon honor, like Smee saved them earlier with get away from my captain.
Yeah.
which does show a special relationship because there's no duty to rescue, absent, special circumstances, whether it's contractual or you have some, like parent-child, like there are specific times when there can be a duty to rescue. But,
Hmm.
the general rule is you can watch someone drown and like you have no duty to go save them. It just makes you a horrible person if you're in a position to do some good and you don't. It's one thing to go like, I could get hurt, so I'm not doing that. Like that's going out, swimming out to the drowning person is how drownings happen. Uh, but throwing a rescue line, like that shouldn't be, a deal breaker. But this was substantially more with they were all willing to go get him,
Hmm.
and then they send in the pirate that they don't know if they can trust.
Yeah.
And the pirate delivers.
Yeah, and also, you're sending a pirate into a pirate base that he knows. He's an adult, they're kids, so I think, it was reasonable.
He can't just put on a jacket and have like one of them hide like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that also didn't work. So
Right. It's no better than like, I'm fine, everything's fine here. How are you?
there are t-shirts with that, and it's so brilliant. Uh and I don't know if how much, if any of that was ad-libbed or if that was the script.
Hmm.
Uh how are you? Uh oh, love it so much. But this, yeah, I think there was a duty. They saved him. We do get some reckless flying, and from my boating world, like you're supposed to disconnect dock lines,
Hmm.
because they make horrible spring lines. And there's something called synthetic line snapback, which is
Hmm.
how people can get cut into two pieces in an ugly way. That so you can overstretch a line, and most line today is synthetic. Sure, there's still some manila, but it's rare to see a working ship with manila line. They're normally it's a synthetic of some kind. Well, if those are stretched past their working elasticity, they can snap. And when
Hmm.
they snap, they will go flying and cut
Hmm.
people in two and property damage, and it's terrifying. Like you don't want to get hit by a working line, you don't want to stand on a loop, like you just there are all kinds of horrible ways to get hurt if you're not careful.
Hmm.
So we see synthetic line snapback. And again, the boater in me was like, wow, that was impressive.
Yeah,
Like,
someone did their research.
yeah, it's like that's you snap an anchor line. I mean, or a dock line. I mean, there are horror stories. Tugboats or docking aircraft carriers have gone wrong, and you don't want that. Okay, we have can children and adults form a partnership? Now, few people dream of corporate law, but generally you can form a partnership with two people coming in and they agree on a common cause, and there's could be a profit of some kind. There normally is. Somebody might be bringing in money, somebody might be bringing in skill, and you can form a partnership where you go on this joint adventure. um if it's supposed to be for a limited purpose, you could be a joint venture instead of a partnership, but the formation's very similar. But that raises the issue of can kids contract? And
I think the only way in a situation that this could work is if, like Jod was their guardian ad litem or was their parent, then I think they could form a partnership as long as they are old enough. And I think they're kind of like at that sort of fence line of are they old enough to really have that kind of maturity to know that. But other than that, in this situation, I think it's a no.
yeah, I agree with that. Like they're pushing their luck, but they're also playing the only cards that they have. Like,
Right.
I mean, they gotta get home. Like, and this is not. It reminds me of some of the gaming companies that form, esports teams with kids who can't legally contract,
Hmm.
and it's like they signed that with a 14-year-old. Like that's not enforceable. Like,
Right.
where's the parent to sign on the dotted line because that kid's not of the age of majority.
Right.
And but again, these kids are lost and they're trying to get home. So like there's
Hmm.
gonna, even the law just might imply it because they have to.
Hmm.
Um, but when we talk about four, either before or after Christmas, you see it pay off. So
Yeah.
it works. Then it raises, can children hire an adult? And my God, I start thinking 80s movies left and right
Hmm.
of, I'm like, I don't know which ones, but it's like this is just screaming early 80s Reagan era movie going of it was a kindler, simpler time.
Hmm.
When we thought like, yeah, that's cool. And for some reason Richard Pryor and the toy come to mind, but that's the other direction. Uh uh
It made
but
me think of Batman and
okay.
Bruce Wayne and Alfred. Technically Thomas and Martha Wayne hired Alfred, but when they died, Bruce is his boss, but Alfred is also more like a guardian to him. So, but he doesn't introduce him like this is my guardian. It's like, no, this is my butler. So in that kind of situation, it has Bruce hired him, or when, Bruce needs an attorney and the company does it on his behalf, you know, or something of that effect. So it was like there are some barriers there. But again, like we were talking about in the last question, like they're playing the only cards they have.
Yeah, they gotta get home. Like, I mean, now granted, if they hadn't dealt with Jod's influence and the New Republic X-Wings had shown up, they
Hmm.
still would have gotten home. Because they, like it would, but it would have been their version of Child Protective Services going like, "You're from where?"
Yeah.
Uh, and there'd be more resources put to play. Because then it is like finding lost kids.
Hmm.
We have procedures in place.
Yeah.
So it's not like random hobos trying to help a kid get home. We
Hmm.
have entire government agencies that would be helping with that. Like law enforcement would be involved. Um, which then raises the question with the New Republic. In order to avoid posse comitatus issues of repeating the sins of the empire with the military doing law enforcement, I think this is more like the Coast Guard. Because the Coast Guard can do law enforcement, even though they do have a military mission. And I think those X-Wings are more like Coast Guard cutters.
Yeah, I think I don't know at what year, but Mon Mothma cuts down the military dramatically. And I don't think that happened immediately. That definitely didn't happen immediately after the Return of the Jedi, and I don't think it happened immediately after um the Battle of Jakku, which eventually ended the war, but that was like a year afterwards. So I think it was just one of those situations where, they were probably paring it down and transitioning into the New Republic Defense Force or coalition that Hera's a part of in Ahsoka.
Yeah,
But yeah, probably just having, some people patrolling in the area.
yeah. Hopefully they're not doing the drawdown yet, because again, we did not maintain a 600 ship two war navy.
Hmm.
Even though, well, we can theoretically fight two wars at once, but we don't have the 600 ship navy anymore. It's different because we don't have the Cold War. We have a different world order.
Yeah.
However, at this stage of the galactic history, I would be premature to do demilitarization when you have known threats. And while it's President Jefferson, before being president, was not keen on building up the Navy, was not keen on, this large standing army. But man, did he use what Adams built for him.
Hmm.
And with taking on the Barbary pirates. And so and in the letters between the two of them in their later years, like Jefferson does acknowledge that of like, yeah, you were right to build that navy. Like I was My bad. So, I learned. Uh, and I think they're at that stage of they have pirate threats, so they can't ignore that. And from Ahsoka, while you have senators declaring peace and doing their best Gerald Knight impression of neutrality, they still have a real imperial remnant to contend with. And
that they don't think is a real threat, or some don't. But yeah, it's there's no specific time in canon where the Demilitarization Act happened, but it did pare down the rebel fleet by 90%, and they left the defense up to the individual planets.
that's a bad plan.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, you can't, I mean, like, you can't have a power vacuum. You know,
Hmm.
you can go, we're going to knock it down by 40%. Like that,
Yeah.
but space is big, and
Hmm.
we're going to have villainy fill that void if we're not there patrolling it because peace is maintained. Peace is just not the natural state. Want it to
Right.
be, but you need to have uh, law enforcement and the courts in place in order for society to function. Which
Yeah, courts don't seem to really exist well in Star Wars.
we've only seen one live action trial, and
Yeah.
that was Andor, and it was
Yeah.
terrifying.
And then you had the animated trial in the Clone Wars. You have one comics military tribunal trial with Lando, which I have thoughts on.
Yeah, and I've watched the deleted scene from Solo, where
Hmm.
Han's court-martialed for crashing a TIE fighter, and that could have been the first live action.
Hmm.
And I have lots of thoughts on the Ahsoka trial just because of it's not how trials work.
Hmm.
Um, but it's there,
Yeah.
and that's good to have it there. Uh, so we'll see what happens next, but I'm loving this. I mean, I look forward to Tuesday nights,
Hmm.
you
I
know.
just wish it was more than 8 episodes.
Yeah, so there's no right answer to this because it's a personal question, and and people are different. And I'll start with my cards on the table. I absolutely love having live action Star Wars TV. I love having friends over and watching it. I love coming home from work and watching it. It makes me happy. There are those who love the movies and
Hmm.
want to think of it as the theater experience. I love that too. And I love both, and I'm grateful to have both. I think they're different. At Celebration 22, I was lucky to go see the end of the Clone Wars. They had it at the big
Hmm.
theater.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, and it was so good watching that with 5,000 other people.
Hmm.
Like, victory and death, and the end scene with, again, 5,000 of your closest friends, is a wonderful, cool experience. But I'm also happy to watch it on the couch.
Yeah.
Do
Uh,
How about you? Where
I
do you?
feel I feel the same. Being able to see, so I was also at Celebration 22, and so I got to see the 2 episodes of Kenobi early, in
Oh,
there, and I can tell you there are a few other Star Wars moments watching it in theaters that compare to when at the end of episode 2, you know, Obi-Wan's just like Anakin, and then we see Hayden while as Vader in the tube, and everybody's just like, oh! And then it ends, and then we're all talking about it as we walk out. Like that's like I love that, and I would personally hope that for a lot of the Star Wars shows going forward, if you want to show the first episode or two in theaters, do it in every state and
yeah.
stop leaving out Michigan, Lucasfilm. Like, come on, help me out.
Yeah. I'm like an hour. It depends on traffic, anywhere from an hour to 2 hours away from where they've done premieres at the Lucasfilm campus, and never gone. I've had friends who have gone and describe how wonderful it is. But they did that for episode 5 of Ahsoka,
Mm-hmm.
That had to be a phenomenal reveal.
Yeah.
I just imagine seeing that. And again, with whether it's a couple hundred or 1,000 people. I mean, if you've heard me say the story before, say so, but seeing Empire Strikes Back at age 5,
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what was going to happen. I was 5, and my mother, gleefully told the story about, like, we were in the parking lot of the Dome Theaters by the Winchester Mystery House, and the cars going around us because the line snaked around through the parking lot. And, my little legs didn't go to the end of the seat. And I'm sitting there with my popcorn and my soda. And for the runtime of the movie, I didn't move or blink. And I still remember the shrieks and screams of horror with "No, I am your father."
Mm-hmm.
And Star Wars has had 2 or 3 perfect surprises now. And, with the second being Luke at the end of Mando season 2, of
Mm-hmm.
just people losing their minds because, like, they didn't, it's a perfect surprise. Uh,
Yeah.
Having that experience in the theater is awesome.
Yeah.
Seeing reaction videos to Mando with people losing their minds, priceless as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, the shared experience is beautiful.
I
And
remember Attack of the Clones. I was 7. It was the midnight show, so it was my first midnight
mm,
showing. So it
lovely,
was my dad and my brothers.
as it should be.
And when Yoda walks in, everybody just starts losing their minds. And then he pulls out the lightsaber. Everybody stands up and it's just applauding, and we're just all watching that scene standing up.
It's so beautiful. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just such okay, like in that scene is just, it's such a wonderful lightsaber fight. And like using the force to draw the lightsaber again.
Hmm.
I'm glad you had that. And I'm glad you
Yep.
had that with your dad and your brother. Because that's just, again, it's a formative, amazing memory. And
Hmm.
Star Wars delivers on that.
Yeah.
So I just like keep it coming. Whether it's TV or movie, I'll be here for it. Take my money. Um, with the first 2 episodes, 2 other lawyers came over and we watched together and we had pizza and a lot of food, and it was awesome.
Hmm.
You know, of and like and people are able to get here from work, and we can wait till everyone's here to start. A little harder to do that with a movie that we all got to be here by 7. Let's go.
Yep.
Uh, but again, I'm grateful. I think that's the best way to define my fandom. I'm grateful
Yeah.
for what we have. So, any closing thoughts? And where can people find you on your preferred social media?
Yeah, closing thoughts. Yeah, I'm really enjoying Skeleton Crew. I'm looking forward to doing some more legal analysis with you. So thank you for having me on. I also, it's not only, Goonies vibes, which is like it's a classic, but it's also Treasure Planet vibes, and I
Oh,
love Treasure Planet. So I think that it's hitting on things I love, and of course it's Star Wars, and I'm waiting for, I have my predictions and I won't say them, but I'm waiting for some things to happen, and I'm on Lando or Hondo watch, because Hondo, he's a pirate. He's still alive at this time. He's alive for like another, 30 years
30
after
years.
this. And Lando obviously is alive as we see him in the sequel trilogy, but around now he has Calrissian Enterprises, which specializes in droids. So, he's a scoundrel, well known. They got a droid that needs some help with his memory. Good Jod, go see your old buddy Lando.
Uh, God, I would love that. And whether and I don't care which actor.
Yeah.
I'm happy either way. Like you both nail the role. And one it gets aged up, one gets aged down, and either way, it's like you're going to need another 15, 20 years on you, and you're going to need like 30 less. Uh,
Well, no, I think so. Donald Glover's like in his early 40s now, so
oh,
he'd only be a few years behind. He's either yeah, no, because I'm 30 now, so yeah, so I think he's like at least 10 years older than me. So yeah, so he's around
the right
the
age.
age. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Well, again, that's what makeup artists do with like knock off 5 years, add five
Hmm.
years. It's normally in the neck and around the eyes. So like just play that. But again, that's a wonderful expectation or hope.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think of that. I was thinking Hondo. I thought Hondo, but like both were in Rebels
Hmm.
and would make sense.
Yep.
So oh, well done, sir.
Yeah.
Uh
My friend Brooke brought that up to me about Lando, and I was just like, "Don't, don't give me hope."
don't tease me like that.
Yeah.
That's well, I want to say thank you and also welcome to the crew.
Yes.
Since this is your first appearance with us, and was for those who don't remember, we actually got to meet for the first time at San Diego Comic-Con, and where I recognized your voice. Is like that sounds like. Wait,
Yeah, I did a
wait
very
a
bad
minute.
job telling people that I was going to be at San Diego Comic-Con. Because I was just like, I'm just going for the experience, and I knew some friends were going, and then I get there and I found out a lot more friends when I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should have said, I'm going. Who else is going? Because I didn't cosplay,
Mhm.
so usually like I cosplay, and so then more people sort of take that kind of interest. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and I'm more the casual cosplay of like a jacket, like I have an Andor jacket or a Han
Mhm.
jacket and a t-shirt or a Roosevelt shirt for presenting. I do have a couple Star Wars bow ties. So again, it depends on the setting. But I found in my early days of doing cons when I would wear a suit, I thought like this is really hot and uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And I learned very quickly, no, we're not doing that anymore. I mean, like we're not doing shorts and a polo shirt, but like jeans and a polo shirt and nice shoes. Um, it's easy to navigate the con because you want comfortable shoes.
Yeah.
Uh, you need comfortable shoes for those events. But yeah, I was glad that you were there. Glad it was like, wait a minute. I'm glad you asked the question too, because it was cool to actually meet. Uh,
Yeah.
and also go like, oh, how tall is he? Like that game of when you only see people online, you don't.
Yeah. Be like you have a lower half or below the shoulders even.
Yeah, and I've had friends like, oh, you're way taller than me or way shorter than me. Like again, things that you just didn't know.
Yeah.
Because I love Zoom, but there's difference with being there in person. So with that, everyone, oh, your socials, TikTok,
Uh,
Instagram, what do we?
yeah. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, I guess. Blue Sky. It's everything is Star Wars Lawyer, and Blue Sky. I think it's like Star Wars Lawyer .bsky dot whatever. I it's the replacement for Twitter. I still don't use it. I'm sort of enjoying being disconnected from a Twitter like space. Although it looks like Threads is sort of taking on that like sort of there seems to be a flight in those really let's call them negatively interesting opinions that make you scratch your brain and be like, hey, you type that? That seem to be popping up on Threads. So maybe, it's like I'll stick to, YouTube and Instagram. But yep, Star Wars Lawyer everywhere.
Excellent. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Uh, Wherever you are, I hope you're enjoying December. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay geeky. And we'll see you soon. Take care.